Welcome to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm John Dykes, and I'm delighted to be able to provide for you the third instalment of the Takeover Special. Back on the 1st of December 1991, the second public meeting organised by the Save Our Celts Independent Celtic Supporters Association took place again at Shettleston Halls. In attendance to answer questions was Terry Cassidy, then the CEO of Celtic Football Club, who spoke about how Celtic would be able to meet the recommendations of the Taylor Report by 1994, how they would raise the revenue to upgrade the stadium or build a new stadium, how the money made from the Umbro contract would be spent and invested, whether or not Celtic would be able to keep their talisman Paul McStay, moving into a British league, offering value for money to Celtic supporters, his view on the board's relationship with the fans, and also the relationship that Celtic had with the media. Professor Tom Carberry offered a dim view on the potential methods of the football club raising the required revenue. But the real worry, listening back to Terry Cassidy all these years later, is that although he was certain that in just over 2 years the Celtic board would have built, in his words, the best stadium in Europe, he offered absolutely no reassurance as to how the money would be raised. Now, the first section of this podcast includes short interviews with Willie Wilson and Terry Cassidy just before the forum took place. We then hear largely from Terry Cassidy, but in section number 5, Professor Thomas Carberry offers his view on why the Celtic board would be unsuccessful in doing everything that Terry Cassidy promised. It's an intriguing listen, and I hope you enjoy part 3 of AXOM's Takeover Special.
Willie, what is the purpose of this afternoon?
I think it's an open discussion among Celtic fans on the future of Celtic. Mr Cassidy has kindly came along. We have a lot of questions to answer, and hopefully we'll get the answers that we're looking for.
Mr Cassidy, just how frank can you be, how open can you be this afternoon?
I think, as you can in any other situation, 99.9% of things that need to be said can be said. There's always something, perhaps, that because of a delicacy of a negotiation that can't go on. And apart from that, I wish people wouldn't call me Mister, because I feel old enough without being called Mister.
Sorry, Terry. What about any fear at all, any trepidation before you take this stage?
Oh no, I'm working on the principle that everybody here is genuinely behind Celtic and only wants what's good for Celtic, and that's the way I'll start off. Now, if I find that I've got a few hostile individuals, I might change the way we go about it, but I've got to work on the basis that it's a positive meeting designed to, I think, initially give us, as you said, information to Celtic supporters and just have a frank discussion.
What is Save Our Celts at now? What stage is it at now?
It's just at the stage it's always been at, trying to get a better deal for the ordinary supporter within Celtic, get more communication and get an active participation within Celtic. After all, it is a fans club and should open up a bit more. We're seeing signs today that things are happening. Hopefully we can forge ahead with that.
But how representative do you think your organisation is of the Celtic fans?
We only have to look today. If I would say this is a wide range of Celtic fans. This is representative as any other organisation.
Gentlemen, have a good afternoon. Thanks.
Thank you. Like Tom Grant, whose prime responsibility is to look after the stadium, we've got a very, very difficult time. And we find that time and time again, it's a health and safety committee or it's some regulatory body that come along and say, well, that isn't good enough, you've got to start all over again, you've got to spend several £100,000 on this. We certainly to my knowledge, have never quibbled about that, and that money's been paid, and we've always done more than's been required of us. As far as the stand being closed next year, obviously we don't want that, and we can't really afford to have that. A plan has been put forward, which we believe is acceptable, and we were talking to our engineers on Thursday night, and they believe that a lot of progress has been made and that we shouldn't have the problem of having the stand closed. But it's not our decision. But there isn't a choice, is there? That money has to be arranged. As has already been said, talk's cheap. It's what's done that's important. You can talk forever. Well, what do you want me to tell you? What do you want me to tell you, that we're not going to raise the money?
I think the substantive point was what happens if the money isn't raised? Are there contingency plans? Are we going to sort of bolt down seats in the jungle sort of thing, as we've seen St Mirren and other clubs do? Are there contingency plans?
Contingency plans in the event of what?
Of not raising the £50 million or whatever it is to build a new stadium.
Well, we have to build a stadium wherever it is, whether it's where we are now or whether it's on a new site by 1994 because of the Taylor report, and we have to do that. It's not a question of can we or can't we. So it's got to be done. What you're talking about is what level of stadium. Mm-hmm. But we have to have an all-seater stadium by that time. If we don't have an all-seater stadium by that time, then we're not in business.
We close the door. That's really what it
amounts to. I don't know. I can't look into the future.
No, but we've got a deadline to meet.
Yes, and I can't convince you, obviously, by talk. We will meet the deadline, and we will have the stadium, and in my opinion, we will have the best stadium in Europe.
I'd settle for the best stadium in Glasgow, not let alone Europe.
Fine.
We'll move on. We've got question number 3 from Matt McGlone of Glasgow.
I'd like to ask Mr. Cassidy, first of all, if Liam Brady's ability to compete in the transfer market will be hindered by the fact that he's got huge sums of money to raise to build a proper stadium that Celtic fans deserve?
Well, no, obviously the idea is that, and this is where we get into all these various methods of raising money, and that's why it's important that we can try and separate the two issues, because as well as trying to raise money for a stadium, people also forget that once you've got it, it needs maintaining and it needs running, and that'll need an awful lot of money as well. So what we're trying to do is to keep the two issues separate, so that when we finally got the stadium, and that's financed however it may be financed, that traditional monies, i.e. monies that come through turnstiles, monies that come through the sale of Celtic products, pies, chips as well, and all the rest of it, that they can be kept for really the two reasons why you run a football club. And in my book, you only run a football club for two groups of people. One is the supporters and the other one is the team. And if it can be arranged that that's the way the finances are, then the stadium issue and the cost of the stadium issue will have no effect on monies available to the manager or not available to the manager.
Where is the money from that the Umbro contract going to? It's not important how much they get per month or whatever, but the money from the Umbro contract.
The point I'm making is that people keep making general and sweeping statements as if they are the truth, and then hold Celtic Football Club and the board responsible to try and defend things which aren't true. Willie Wilson's saying that we have problems selling the boxes. It has been published that we got more money from selling executive boxes this year than we got last year. But that is a fact.
The price was higher.
Well,
that is a fact.
I'm sure that you would agree that this kind of forum where the fans can get things clarified is an advantage in that score. And the point still remains that the Umbro contract and the money, where's it going to?
But I've already said that the running of the club in a day-to-day basis, as is the case now, will be financed by the normal incomes that you get from activities related to football as they stand. And I've already said that. I said that the turnstile money, the money from catering within the stadium, the money from products that are sold, and all of those incomes will be, we hope to be able to keep them separate from the running of and the financing of a stadium.
I read somewhere that Mr. Cassidy had a range of options to put to the board. Now, I think it would be quite unrealistic of those of us here today to expect them to reveal them to us before he reveals them to the board. But nonetheless, it seems to me that there are about 6 possibilities. 1, you find an angel, you find a godfather, like the guy at Blackburn or Alan Sugar at Tottenham Hotspur, the way Sir Thomas Lipton put it into Shamrock the Third. Now, the trouble with people like that is, A, you have to find them, B, you have to persuade them to put in the money. But C, when you do, they want an element of control, and I don't see the board letting them have that. The second is debenture stock. Now, Mr. Cassidy, I thought, was fair and optimistic in his earlier contribution. He concedes that other clubs have tried to raise money by debenture stock and failed. But he believes, if I understand him right, that he has, or the club has, some magic formula which would possibly make their sale of debenture stock work. I find that hard to believe. I'd be delighted to be found wrong, but I don't think it's going to happen. The third possibility is to increase the share issue, to transform the company from the small private company that it is into a normal joint stock company. Now, there's all sorts of problems there. First of all, those of us from the Irish community, Irish Catholic community here in the west of Scotland aren't renowned for the nature of our investment portfolio. So we are not normally the sort of folk that buy shares. Secondly, whoever buys the shares, it would mean that control would be wrested away, or would be liable to be wrested away from the board. And third, it could mean that not only that happens, but the tradition of the club goes, and that the name is retained, the name itself even may be abandoned, but the name could be retained, but there could be no real linkage into the Irish community. In other words, it could become a Glasgow Hibernian, wear the colour, have the name, but virtually indistinguishable from any other team in the Scottish League. Now, I don't see the board doing that either. The fourth possibility is a bank loan. Well, you're kidding. I mean, we know the banks aren't very good these days, but at the moment they're merely foolish, they're no daft. They're not going to give 30, 40 million pound loans to the Glasgow Celtic Football and Athletic Company Limited. The fifth possibility is to get sponsorship money up front, but they've just taken in a lot of sponsorship money, and I don't see sponsorship money coming in up front to be of the size and nature that is required for the commitment for the state. Now, as I understand it, there is a sixth possibility which the board is toying with. Whether with or without Mr. Cassidy's blessing, I wouldn't know. And this is the identification of some 20, 30 millionaires who will be talked into giving $1 million each. Now, that's to include people like Dempsey and Sean Connery. Well, the way things are looking, I think Sean Connery is more likely to give it to the SNP, and I think Dempsey would give it even to BCCI before he would give it to the Celtic. Now, these are the 6 normal methods of raising money. It may be that Mr. Cassidy, drawing on his commercial experience, or members of the board, drawing on their commercial experience, can come up and extend that range of options. I think it's unlikely. And so one keeps going round this carousel. And I know that Mr. Cassidy finds it tiresome and hurtful that we go on making the point. But I'm afraid we're going to go on making the point. I'm not even a Mike Kelly that out and run a successful business, but certainly what that board needs is 5, 6, 10-fold of that background. And then it might begin to take off.
It was touched on in one way about talking about players, A, can we afford them, and B, would we keep them? And what's happened is, since Liam Brady's arrived, that we've sat down together and gone through the whole wages structure on the team side. And I disagree with Peter Rafferty when we say we want 2 good teams, one commercial and one football. We want one good team because they're really indivisible. There's only one Celtic Football Club, not 2 or 3. And I think that one of the things that has been done now is that looking at all of the players, from juniors right through to the most senior player in the club, comparisons are being done about where they stand, what they should get paid, and what sort of structure there should be. And there is now a wage structure in there. Secondly, probably more importantly, is that wage structure is competitive. And there's no problem now in talking to players, for example, from England, and not being able to get them because we won't pay them what they can get down in the south. So as far as Paul McStay is concerned, and at this point in time, there is not the panic that you might believe if you read the newspapers. Paul McStay has already talked to Liam Brady. The talks have been, as you would expect, friendly. There is no urgency on either side. Paul isn't saying, look, I want this thing sorted out, otherwise I'm off. Again, you might believe if you read other newspapers. And it's been left that clearly Paul will think about what he wants to do with his future, because you mustn't underestimate that. We might be able to offer him financially a better deal than he can get anywhere else. He may believe that in his own personal ambitions and where he wants to be in the football world, he may be better off playing in a different league. Maybe he thinks that. I'm not saying he does. Just don't go away and say I said that Paul McStay said, because that isn't true. I'm just trying to put forward a few of the things that we have to deal with. But if it's a question of can we match and will we pay him and will the inducements be sufficient, if those were the only things to consider to keep Paul McStay, the answer to that is yes. But the lad's own personal ambitions have also got to be taken into consideration. A year from now, we won't be recognised, and that won't be because we've gone down the way, it's because we've gone up the way. Whatever you do for a living, you want to believe that the company that you are employed by is one that is going to be around for a long time and is one that's going to be successful, and that should be no more different for a professional footballer than it should be for any of us. And he's quite right, perhaps to have those thoughts, even if he has or has not expressed them. And it's up to the club to convince him that the ambitions are parallel and at least, if not more, than his. Again, I think that steps have been taken to indicate that. Within the club, what we've got to do is we've got to talk about where we think Celtic football clubs should be. And I don't think being successful in Scottish football is good enough. We've got to be successful in Europe. And I think we've got to set timescales, if we can, where we expect to win a European competition within a certain period of years, whether it be 5 years or 7 years. And I think that a lot of people don't understand the importance of Liam Brady's appointment as football club manager, because I think it was Willie that said earlier that it broke a tradition, and it's not just breaking a tradition that all previous managers had been Celtic people. It's the fact that brings to it a different dimension, hopefully a different way of looking at things, hopefully a more successful way of looking at things, hopefully a broader vision, hopefully signals an intention to get out of the sort of level that we're at. There are all sorts of exciting possibilities. I don't know what the possibility of the breakaway of the 20 teams out of the English First Division can lead to. It may well lead to a United Kingdom League, and we must be in that. It's no good talking about the great Celtic club if we're not the great Celtic club. So if there are movements of that kind, we not only must have ambitions towards being in there, but we've got to make sure that we do everything we can to guarantee to be in there. If there's a UK Cup, which is again a proposal, then we want to be part and parcel of that. And I don't think that we would kid ourselves that we would be hugely successful at this moment. But there are signs that the team is playing better, and there are signs that we are beginning to motor now. And in fairness, when the team plays at its best, it plays absolutely brilliantly. And it plays some superb football which will match any team anywhere. So, as I said earlier, if you take the specific instance of Paul McStay, I believe we're now in a position where we can actually talk sensibly to Paul, and comparatively, in terms of money or any other possible inducements that any other club can offer him.
We go to question 3 from Jim Halfpenny of Glasgow.
I'd like to ask the panel, what benefits are there in having a season ticket at Celtic Park?
Can I start with that?
I was going to put you...
Well, I've said before anybody else does, not a lot.
No, right.
Tell me something I already know.
In spite of what's been said, that nobody at Celtic Park kids themselves that there isn't a lot wrong at Celtic Park. There's a hell of a lot of things wrong. In fact, just about everything that I look at needs attention and needs to be done. And one of the things is the question that's just been asked. What benefits does anybody get from going to Celtic Park? And we've touched on those in a number of ways, on the state of the ground and where are we going and what it's all about, etc., etc. And I think that we have to improve the benefits that people get, this because the supporters at the end of the day will decide the future of the club. Without the support, there is no club. So you've got to start somewhere by trying to improve the lot of the people that pay money to come along and see the team perform. And we have to find ways of giving people value for money. And we have a wonderful platform in the commitment that the supporters show to Celtic is probably greater than supporters show to any other club. The loyalty and I would almost say devotion they show to the club is probably unmatched. And we've got to start giving them something in return for that. And it's very difficult, and the club is going to go through probably its worst 2 years between now and arriving at the stadium that we finish up with, whether that be a redeveloped Celtic Park or whether it be on a greenfield site. But the next 2 years are going to be awful, because we've got this stadium, which is pretty much a white elephant in the present situation that football is running. There are loads and loads of commercial opportunities which we can't even tap because they're not there because of the site that we're on, and won't be there until we get a developed stadium. And so, as far as the next 2 years are concerned, I think they're going to be tougher than the current years. As far as the comment about the teams coming up or playing teams which didn't draw crowds, what I said was that there is a possibility, and that possibility still exists, that you could get to a stage where it costs you actually more to open the ground than you would take through the turnstiles. That's what I said. And that possibility still exists. I think that it seems to be easy for people here to express things like the board's contempt for the support and how bad the board are and everything else. And I think in some ways that's quite disgraceful, because the board do not hold the support in contempt, and the board have tried.
No, please.
The board have tried, and indeed, one way of tried to show that there's a difference is that they have appointed a chief executive at the beginning of this year, and that's changed the structure of the way the club is run. If you go back to the question on what sort of qualities do directors of football club mean, well, what you've got to do is start asking first of all, what kind of a football club? Because there are football clubs which are run by one man, and that one man effectively does what he wants, and any directors on the board do as they are told. So if you want that sort of a football club, it doesn't matter what qualities the directors have got, they'll just do as they're told. If they don't do as they're told, they get removed and he puts somebody else on. If you want to talk about a football club which is run as a business and is structured as a business, then clearly the criteria needed by those directors are the same ones that you would look for in industry, the directors of major companies like ICI or any other major company. So it depends what sort of football club you want. It's already been said by somebody here today at the table that pretty much all football clubs are badly run. And I would think, I wouldn't disagree with that too much. But perhaps what somebody might do is to give credit for Celtic for trying to break that mould. And maybe we are trying to run the football club properly. But turning around the QE2 is harder than turning around a rowing boat on a park lake. And I think if somebody would give us a little bit of credit for what we're trying to do, and as I said before, talk's cheap. If I don't do what I'm paid to do, then I'll get fired, and that's the way it should be, because that's what I'll deserve. But I can't, and nobody can, take Celtic Football Club from its present problems and overnight make them into a highly successful football club. But that is the objective of Celtic Football Club. I believe, as already said down here, it's the objective of everybody within this room. We are united in that we're all here for Celtic. It's certainly the objective of the board, and it's certainly the objective of people like myself, Liam Brady, and everybody else that works within Celtic Football Club. I mean, the board realised that with the advent of Taylor reports and what was coming up in the future, and the way that the club was structured, that they were not set up to be able to tackle those properly and professionally. And I think they deserve credit for deciding to bring somebody in and to do that, because they could have, no need to have done that. I mean, some of the strange things is that the criticism, people saying, oh, well, they're responsible for what happened in the Jock Stein era. I suppose they're equally responsible, if that's the way you're going to use it, for being the first British club to win the European Cup, because that was the same sort of setup that you were talking about there. But they don't get the credit for anything they do, but they take a hell of a hammering, and sometimes, I believe, very unfairly. And when I was offered the job, the first thing I said to the board, do you realise what it means to take on a chief executive? And they said, yes, they did. And I said, well, I don't believe that you do. But they said, yes, we do. We know the full implications, and we know what we're doing. So I then said, do you know what it means to take on a chief executive like me? And they said, yes, we do. And I said, I don't believe you do. But in fairness and in full credit to them, they did. And we have had some iffy situations now and again at the beginning where I think that the same directors who'd agreed to put me on the board, put me in the job, would have removed me out of the job just as quickly at the beginning, because what I was worried about came to pass. But in fairness to them, and again it was mentioned earlier on this afternoon about a divided board, I've never seen the board more united than they have been in the last 3-4 months. So I believe it's difficult, obviously, clearly it's difficult. I believe that we're going the right way. I believe that we can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and it is not a 125 train with its spotlight on coming towards us. It is the light at the end of the tunnel. But there are certain things that I can't say. Fortunately, the biggest possible source of revenue in financing the stadium has escaped Mr. Carberry, so at least I don't have to pass comment on that. But there is a source of revenue which is far greater than any of those that he's mentioned. And overall, bit by bit, and I take the criticism as it's meant. It's meant in a spirit of being constructive and helpful to the club. It's a bit hard to take now and again because it tends to be pretty incessant.
We should be the first to hear about all these things about new stadiums, etc., and we're not. Jeremy McNee's telling the whole world. Alec Cameron's telling the whole world. And then we have to hear them. And if they're a distorted story, then the first person that we pick on is people like yourself. I think you've got enough to look today to sort that one out.
First of all, I don't know anybody at Celtic who is taking money on at the board of directors or at managerial level from any newspaper within the United Kingdom. Secondly, you're quite right. Celtic View should be the official organ of the club, and it should be the one used to tell people what's going on. Thirdly, there's very little that we can do if in the way of conjecture, I remember headlines which said quite categorically on a number of newspapers that Lou Macari was definitely the manager of Celtic Football Club. I can't remember any one of those newspapers saying, sorry lads, we got it wrong. But, there's not much I can do about it. And they make statements as if they're fact, and when they are proved conclusively by the way events have turned out, there's never a blush, never mind an apology. I don't know how you can deal with that. The only way you can deal with that, I think, at the end of the day is by trying to be using the Celtic View, as you quite rightly said, but also being consistently open and honest. And that's all you can do. You just keep going at it and going at it and going at it. But there are more newspapers produced in Glasgow than any other city in the United Kingdom. And I guess if you said that there might be 5 columns on average, probably even more than that, on all those newspapers, then they're talking about trying to fill 25 columns a day. And they're all trying to get a different angle or a different story or a new story. I can't agree with them or condone what they do, but I can understand why sometimes you get gross exaggerations and they run hairs that never ever get anywhere. I guess from talking to supporters when I've been outside the ground or wandering around and meeting people, who said in the body of the kirk at the last meeting that my view was that, well, not unusually, there were two separate parts to the Save Our Celts campaign. There's the people like Willie who want to run the club, and there's the rest of the people who seem genuinely concerned about the club and turn up at these meetings in the spirit in which the meetings are intended to be. I have never ever made public, through the newspapers or anywhere else, any of the correspondence that I've received from Save Our Celts, but it certainly has been the case that any correspondence that I've sent to them has appeared in newspapers. I haven't made reports on telephone conversations or any other conversations I've had with the Save Our Celts organisations, but the Save Our Celts have. So, I mean, I work on the basis that the organisation as such is set up for genuine, caring reasons, which are all about the best interest of Celtic Football Club. But then I have to be guided in my thinking by what happens to me when I meet various people. I mean, it's difficult even to get consistent communication with them. And a lot of the criticism that Save Our Celts officials throw at Celtic Football Club, they are particularly guilty of themselves. And as the man up there said, get your own house in order first. But I welcome the meeting. I'm delighted that you've invited me. Thank you very much for having me and listened to me. It's just went as I thought it would go. It's been, I think, a useful exercise, and I've enjoyed it anyway.